The next update is about Brandon Straka. You guys may recall I just reported about Brandon Straka's plea deal and his sentencing. You know, if we had any question about Straka's sincerity when he apologized to everyone and claimed to be remorseful, yeah, it was all bullshit. We don't have to question it any longer. Straka proved he's still a self-loathing, bigot approval seeking jackass. Yeah. Less than 2 weeks after being gifted with a sentence of only home confinement, probation, and a fine, Straka appeared on the Mark Levin show, and he vowed to destroy the Democratic Party. He also whined about having PTSD due to his arrest and detainment. He was in jail for 2 days, guys. 2 days. Straka told Levin that this trauma began when the FBI put him in handcuffs and searched his home. He said, quote, "For me, this is really where the source of the PTSD began, because within a moment, I lost my identity as a human being. I stopped being Brandon Straka, let alone Brandon Straka, the walkaway campaign guy. And I was wearing an orange jumpsuit and sitting in jail. During those 2 days, I sat in that cell, literally just breaking down emotionally, because I thought to myself, this is now January 25, 2021. So Joe Biden became president 5 days before I got arrested. The Democrats have now taken full control of the federal government. I'm Brandon Straka, the walk away from the Democrats founder, and now I'm sitting in a concrete cell. There are hundreds of people who are facing nonviolent, low-level misdemeanor charges who are being treated like terrorists, like insurrectionists in this country. I actually fall into this category. The government has actually put me on a terrorism watch list." Really, Brandon? Really? Let's compare Brandon's PTSD to the officers who were beaten and tasered on January 6th, shall we? Or maybe the lawmakers who, they and their staff who had to hide in dark rooms under desks for hours, not knowing if they'd ever make it home, not knowing if they'd ever see their loved ones again. And remember, this is the guy who stood with a large crowd on the Capitol steps, outside, of course, as most bullies do, and yelled for them to take the officer's shield. He didn't try to take the officer's shield. He was encouraging others to take the officer's shield. So these people surrounded an officer who was probably outnumbered 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, and Straka is urging them to steal his shield. But sure, Brandon, let's talk about your trauma. Womp womp and thoughts and prayers, Brandon. That's what I have for you. My guess is he's using this to fundraise because during the interview, he said, quote, "My organization, Walk Away, is going to come back bigger and better than ever. And we're going to take down the Democratic Party. We're going to take all these people down." One word, liar. Next up is Victoria White. White was seen in photos and videos outside and inside the Lower West Terrace Tunnel, where the most horrific violence occurred that day. And prosecutors allege that she raised her fist and cheered as other people forced a large flagpole into the tunnel to be used to assault officers. She's also seen pushing on a man from down below. She was helping to hoist him up onto the pillars that sit on either side of that tunnel. And prosecutors say that when that man then hung from the arch of the tunnel and was swinging and kicking officers, White pointed and cheered. A photo of White also shows her reaching up to and grabbing an officer who was standing on a ledge inside of the tunnel. And prosecutors contend that she was being aggressive in that move and that she also tried to take a riot shield away from an officer. And then she used her hand to block an officer's baton. She was then seen in a later photo with her hands zip tied behind her back, and she was being led down a tunnel. And she did have a little bit of blood on her head. So White was taken to a nearby police station that day. This was on January 6th, and she was temporarily detained before she was released without charges being filed. Well, according to White, it all went down very differently. Different than with the cops and the FBI are describing it. So White has filed a $1 million civil lawsuit against the District of Columbia, also the chief of the Metropolitan Police, and several of the officers. And she alleges that she was, quote, beaten, assaulted, battered, physically abused, and subjected to false imprisonment. She claims that even though she didn't harm or threaten anyone, the officers, she says, beat her with a metal baton approximately 35 times and punched her in the face 5 times. If in fact she's telling the truth, if they were aggressive and violent with her, that's wrong. I don't care who it is, that's wrong. However, isn't it right-wingers who always say, whenever it involves a Black person or a brown person, they always say, well, they shouldn't have been breaking the law. If they weren't committing a crime, then the cops wouldn't have gotten involved. Just don't break the law. Or they say, well, why were they resisting arrest? They should have just complied and they'd still be alive. I mean, the ridiculous argument ignores the fact that often the Black or brown person wasn't breaking the law. They weren't resisting arrest. They may have just been driving while Black. Cops roll up on them and they get aggressive because, they fit the description, or, that's at least the BS excuse that they use to play out their white supremacist fantasies. White, on the other hand, was committing a crime. What was she doing in that tunnel where officers were being tased and crushed and beaten and dragged out to the crowd and threatened to be shot with their own weapon? What was she doing there if she was simply protesting and exercising her First Amendment right to free speech? Like I said, that was the most horrific, egregious violence committed that day in that tunnel. Allegedly hoisting someone up on a ledge to kick officers in the face has nothing to do with First Amendment protected free speech. Maybe instead of attending events with the Proud Bigots and people carrying Confederate flags, maybe she should start attending BLM events, because now she should understand what they're all talking about and why we have to remind people that Black Lives Matter. I'll let you guys know what happens with Victoria white privilege.